and welcome to a Beth March inspired video. This video might feel a bit eclectic, but I'm hoping it still channels some of those Little Women vibes and the tender, home-centered heart of the character Beth March. Little Women was first published in 1868 by writer Louisa May Alcott, and the story is famously based on her own experience growing up in America during the Civil War years and living in it beyond. It follows four little women, Meg, the oldest, Jo, Beth, and Amy, on their journey from adolescence to young adult. While our character today, Beth March, sadly dies young after battling the aftermaths of scarlet fever, she's still such an inspiring character to emulate in our daily lives. Beth loves music and playing her pianoforte for her family and friends, which is why I featured a short segment of me playing the organ at the beginning of the video there. Well, I know it's not a piano, it's the instrument I have available to me and have enjoyed playing since I was a girl. I was playing the hymn, Nearer, My God, to Thee. The rest of this video will feature some Beth-inspired moments, trying out paper dolls, sharing a handful of my favorite comfort meals to cook in the kitchen this November, getting out in nature, learning how to knit, and of course, sharing a doll that is inspired by Beth. I think Beth would be in good company around here as she herself loved and treasured her dolls. And I hope this video gives you some inspiration to perhaps try something new. Here is where I'm sharing some of my favorite kind of comforting meals that I enjoy cooking in these cooler months. November is when I finally feel excited to cook again, just like being in the kitchen and being able to make foods that I really enjoy and feel proper to eat because it's no longer blistering hot outside. So the dish I'm currently working on here is creamed chicken and noodles. You start by sauteing some onions, and then you add heavy cream. You make a nice, just have to season it with salt and pepper really, and then boil up some egg noodles, pour the sauce over top, and mix it all up, and then add your choice of chicken. I just cooked up a couple chicken breasts. You could use rotisserie chicken, whatever you really have available, and it's a really yummy, easy, delicious dish. This next meal is, again, also a favorite. This is how to make cabbage roll soup. So if you've ever had cabbage rolls, they are one of my favorites. Such a good meal, but I rarely want to go through the effort and the trouble of actually wrapping cabbage rolls. And struggling with the cabbage, like making sure it doesn't break, all that kind of stuff. So this soup tastes pretty darn close to eating a cabbage roll, and it's just really enjoyable. You cut up some onions, some cabbage, and some carrots, and you brown up some ground beef in the pot, add in your vegetables, season well, then you add in some beef broth. This one I was just using some some powdered beef stock to help flavor it. Then bring that all to a simmer. Once it's really hot, you can add in some rice. I currently only had kind of mostly brown rice. Then you add in some tomato paste as well, and a couple bay leaves for when it's going to be simmering here. And then over the course of about like 30 minutes of it simmering, the rice is going to absorb most of the liquid, and it's going to become thicker and more kind of stew-like. You also here season it with a bit of brown sugar, just about, I think it's like a tablespoon or so. And yeah, then you leave it to simmer, and here my daughter was telling me whether it was tasty or not, and I think she approved. I didn't unfortunately catch a final shot of it in a serving dish, so that's my bad, but do give this one a try if you like cabbage rolls but are not too fond of making them yourself.
How is it?
I think anybody loves the combination of some homemade tomato soup with grilled cheese sandwiches. This was a tomato soup made with cherry tomatoes, some peppers, some basil, and this here is just a classic kind of grilled cheese. You got to put lots of butter on it for you to get that nice golden, crunchy crust. Yeah, it's a classic combo. Never go wrong. Even if you want to just make the Campbell's soup one, I sometimes do that as well, using a can of Campbell's soup, and it still tastes pretty good. But with the tomato season being over, we had tomatoes to use, and this is a really great meal to make with that. Add some cream too. And now I am making, this is a pretty kitchen heavy video. Here I am showing you how I made some spiced plum jam with the plums from our tree. So this was the first year where our plum tree, we have planted a lot of fruit trees since moving into our house because I think that they are such a valuable thing to add to your property. But this was the first year we actually got fruit from it, but unfortunately we had an incident. Deer got in the yard, some of the leaves were chewed off of our plum tree. So it had all these plums, but they didn't really ripen very well. They weren't very sweet because obviously I think the leaves got taken away and there just wasn't enough sugars, but they were still plums. So I decided to make this spiced plum jam, and it's really nice because you don't need to add any like pectin or stuff to the plums, and I just think it tastes like the perfect Christmassy item, and I'm going to be gifting it as Christmas gifts this year. But yeah, here we are out in nature, and I'm just gonna be quiet for a little bit. The reason I've been so kind of kitchen heavy in this video is because Beth, because of her intense social anxiety, opted, instead of going to school, to be homeschooled at home by her father and then eventually by Joe when her father is away. And while, the agreement with her doing that is that she has to partake more in the family chores, the domestic chores that obviously help keep the house running. One of the very common chores in that day would have been baking bread. Here I'm making a sourdough sandwich loaf. I really enjoy the recipe from Sarah Therese Co. I don't know if it's called Co at the end, but it's a really nice, delicious sandwich loaf that lasts for multiple days compared to when you just make a crusty sourdough loaf, which only lasts, I don't know, it doesn't last as long, and then you have that really hard crust. This is really nice for toast, for sandwiches, just for eating plain. And you slather in butter here after you pull it out. This was not my best loaf. I had this weird kind of pinched section and it had a big air pocket in the top, but I hadn't baked a loaf in a while and my starter was kind of funny on me. But yeah, Beth would have been helping bake bread and all those other type of kitchen duties with the housekeeper Hannah. But yeah, here we're just playing some family games, enjoying being home. This is a game called Bananagrams, which is really fun. It's kind of like a different take on Scrabble. And I was also trying to teach my daughter here how to play Go Fish. She didn't quite get the concept yet, but I'm hoping, maybe over the course of the winter, we'll be able to play this game featuring I Spy cards. The I Spy books are something else. I love those books so much. So this was a really fun thing to try. Now, in the past couple years, I practiced and became better acquainted with crocheting. I've shared, I think, a project in maybe my Anne of Green Gables video that I made. I don't do it a ton. I'm not one of those, I just do it to do it people. I like to have a specific project goal that I have in mind before I do something, because I think just to make something and then it not be something you really want is not helpful. But okay, besides all that, I was intimidated by knitting. I had tried it before, but I didn't quite do the technique very well, and it hurt my fingers a lot. So then I picked up crochet, learned how to crochet. I feel pretty confident in basic crochet techniques. But since for my dolls, I've been wanting some more cardigans. My goal this winter is to learn and become better at knitting, because a knit cardigan just looks so much better than a crocheted cardigan. So in this clip here, this is not a doll cardigan. This is in fact a scarf project I'm trying to work on. I'm loosely following a pattern that I found on Martha Stewart's website. It's called a basic scarf pattern. It's mainly a garter, not a garter stitch. It's mainly a stockinette stitch. So you get that really nice V shape on the one side, and then on the other side it just kind of looks like squiggles. Basically you knit on one side and you purl on the other side. And I've kind of found a technique that works for me where I don't hurt my fingers as much, and I'm feeling more confident in my stitches, though I do find it incredibly slow and that it works up very slow. The goal for this scarf is I saw some pictures of the 90s blocked striped scarves where they're kind of they're not evenly blocked colors. There might be different sized rows of different colors, and that's kind of what my goal for this scarf is going to be, a chunk of pink, a chunk of white, and then a chunk of blue, and just kind of something like that. And when I'm feeling a bit more confident, I might move on to attempting a tall cardigan. That one is going to require some more learning steps and skills. But yeah, it's an encouragement that you can try new things and you can get better with a little bit of practice. And I can just imagine it was just such an important craft for women back in the day, knitting or crocheting, and even just hand sewing. And those are things that I feel are, even though they're still very popular, like they're not a demanded of us craft anymore. We don't have to not knit our socks anymore, or fix our sweaters, or, you know. So I think it's really cool to bring that back and channel what Beth and her sisters would have been working on in those cool, dark winter evenings. They probably would have been knitting or sewing, and maybe Beth was even making stuff for her dolls. It's nice to imagine. But yeah, this is kind of how it's working up so far. I have a couple mistakes in it, but I'm just going to leave it as is. So hello and welcome back to the sewing room. This is the final portion of the video where I will be sharing our doll inspired by this video's character. And since this video was inspired by Beth March from the novel Little Women / Good Wives, it's always called just like Little Women, but most of the times that cumulatively means both the Little Women and the Good Wives book put together, because they were two separate pieces of writing. But for Beth March today, we have a very special girl playing her. This is technically a Felicity doll, but she is playing our Beth March today. She, I think, most resembles the Beth as the actress who portrayed her in the 2019 Greta Gerwig adaptation of Little Women. Not my favorite adaptation, but I do like the look of Beth in that film and thought that of my remaining dolls, Felicity would do the job in accomplishing her look. So she has on not maybe the best outfit ever. This green dress that she's wearing was when I was still figuring out what patterns worked best for sewing for my 18-inch dolls. And this one was kind of a flop. It was ideally supposed to be at the neck seam, but yeah, this was from a different like sewing book, Sewing for Dolls book. It wasn't like a Pleasant Company pattern. So I gave it a try, and yeah, it didn't exactly turn out how I wanted, but it still kind of does the job of giving that Civil War-esque type of dress. It's not 100% accurate by any means. And then she just has this really pretty kind of pinafore dress over top of the green dress with her lovely hair in a bow, with a bow, kind of with a bow. Yeah, and she's just, I know if it was technically, she should be wearing probably some stockings or some socks, but I'm kind of low on stockings / socks that I can put on my dolls. My other girls are kind of wearing them at the moment, but she just has, I think they're Kit's shoes from, I don't know, it's from a really cute kid outfit that I would love to have, but it's too expensive. So I am trying to, at some point, make that outfit. But yeah, just some plain shoes. Here is our Felicity as Beth March. Such a lovely character. So sad and tragic that she dies so young in the stories. But yeah, I just wanted to embody in this video the joys of home life, of being somebody who enjoys being at home in the comfort of their home and doing the kind of domestic duties such as cooking lots of comforting meals and just being that steady presence. Like, that's what I think everyone loves so much about Beth, is she was just the steady presence. She wasn't yearning to be somewhere else. She just wanted to be among her family and among her friends and among the things that she loved. And that is just as honorable and admirable of a life as Jo, who was wanting to go off and pursue other, big dreams and stuff. The thing that always, I mentioned how I don't like Greta Gerwig's adaptation, and it's because of the ending and the implications that are kind of made with the way that she does the ending of the movie, where Jo publishes the book, the Little Women book. Because if in the book, in the Little Women book, there's the chapter called Castles in the Air. And everybody shares, like all of the girls and Laurie, share their like heart's desire. This is when they're still young. This is when they're, aspiring to things and all that. And the whole point is like Jo's castle in the air is, yeah, I want to go off. I want to be a big writer. I want to get my things published. Like very, not necessarily bad dreams, but very like for herself type of dreams. And the whole thing that happens at the end of Good Wives is, she was pursuing writing. She was trying to write. She befriends Professor Bear, who then she values as like, as a voice for, of just like reason, like we're always kind of sometimes hesitant to take our own parents' opinions, but him not being her parent, but being like an older figure that's very well read and very well educated, she just like really looked up to him. And so after hearing like his comments on her writing and going back home after like with Beth being sick and then Beth dying, and then with, she talks with her father, like the whole growth, like the whole thing with like you posit what she writes in Castle in the Air, and then you see through the rest of the novel how the girls grow specifically on what their castles in the air are, like they grow through their dream and aspiration, like realizing that they were still young, that they didn't know everything, or our young naivety sometimes. So yeah, the whole point of growth for Jo is when she can actually put down, she writes the story, she writes it for her father, really, like she writes it for her family, she writes the Little Women, but then she puts it away and she turns her mind and her focus to her family and to, loving on her family in this really difficult time of losing Beth. And I feel like Greta Gerwig was trying to do this meta thing of like, oh, but Jo's actually Louisa May Alcott, and she actually got the book published, and she actually didn't want to like put in that her and Professor Bear get together. Even though then Louisa May Alcott has an entire other book of her and Professor Bear being together and creating this beautiful life and family and school for boys and eventually girls. Like, I just feel like the adaptation like cut it off at the knees by trying to do something that didn't need to be done, like, I don't know. I get a bit, I don't know, everybody just, I feel like romanticizes like the fact that Louisa May Alcott didn't want Jo to be with anybody or something, apparently, that she was forced to do it from the publishers. But I think there is, in fact, also a sad reality of like, if you end up without anybody. Okay, I quickly went and I'm just double checking the book. And yeah, so literally there's the castles in the air, and then you come to like the final chapter, Harvest Time. And here they're like, and yet your life is very different from the one you pictured so long ago. Do you remember our castles in the air? Asked Amy. And then they all reflect on how their castles didn't come true, but they got what they actually needed. Jo answers, yes, I remember, but the life I wanted then seems selfish, lonely, and cold to me now. I haven't given up the hope that I may write a good book yet, but I can wait, and I'm sure it'll be all the better for such experiences and illustrations as these. And Jo pointed from the lively lads in the distance to her father, leaning on the professor's arm, as they walked to and fro in the sunshine, deep in one of the conversations which both enjoyed so much, and then to her mother, sitting enthroned among her daughters, with their children in her lap and at her feet, as if all found health and happiness in the face which never could grow old to them. Like, that is what's beautiful and inspiring.
Mom.
You know?
Don't talk.
I don't know. It's a hard thing I've kind of thought both ways about. How people idolize Jo, but like the young Jo, and they don't like finish reading her story, like what Louisa continues her on as. Like Jo becomes this woman who loves her motherly role, her parental role, who loves being a wife to Professor Bear and raising boys and being a teacher and an educator, and that she puts aside writing. Like, it's very interesting that yeah. Read Little Men. If you haven't read Little Men, super recommend Little Men, especially if you're a mom. It's very inspiring. But this was very long. If you want my favorite adaptation to watch, there is the 2017 produced by PBS Masterpiece version. It actually stars Maya Hawke as Jo before she became super big with like doing Stranger Things. And she made a really nice Jo, I thought. I just loved the casting. Like, I wasn't familiar with any of the girls when I first watched it. Like, I wasn't like, I knew that was Maya Hawke. So it was just this really fresh, like, oh, I don't know these women. And they portrayed, like, the whole film was produced basically by like a crew of women. The director, the costume designer, the set designer, like, is all women. And so it has this really beautifully intimate, feminine feel to it. And yeah, and then they also, it's like a 3-part, like 3-hour long segments. So you get a bit more time with the story. It's not as rushed. And it's in chronological order. That's also why I don't like Greta Gerwig's adaptation. Like, I hate the jumping back and forth, but it's so beautiful. That is definitely by far my favorite adaptation. It's so beautiful, and I highly recommend. Okay, this was 10 minutes. Good thing the rest of the video is pretty short, but here's our Beth March. Thank you for joining me. I know everyone's talking about Little Women Christmas. I definitely am going to be channeling some of that in my last character video, which is hard to believe, my last doll that I'm going to be sharing with you all is going to be for a Christmas holiday themed video. And yeah, I'm just so thankful to have you here, and go read Little Women. Bye.